My name is Evelyn Harper, 73 years old. And until 6 months ago, I still believed my only child loved me. I was wrong. It started with a cough. A dry, stubborn thing that wouldn't leave after the flu. My doctor in Asheville, North Carolina sent me for scans. Stage 3 lung cancer. Treatable, he said. Expensive, he didn't have to say. I had savings, a small pension, and the house my husband Tom built with his own hands on 3 acres outside Black Mountain. I figured I'd sell the house if I had to. I'd live. I told my son Caleb and his wife Brooke over Sunday supper. I wanted to be gentle. I rehearsed it in the car the whole 40-minute drive to their new build in Henderson Mill. "Mom, that's awful," Caleb said, mouth half full of my fried chicken. Brooke reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We're here for you, Evelyn, whatever you need." They meant money. I just didn't know it yet. Within a week, Brooke was sending me links to the best oncologists in the country, all in Boston. Houston, Zurich. Each price tag made my stomach drop. She volunteered to manage my finances so I wouldn't be stressed. I left it off. I still had my marbles. Then came the funeral conversation. I was in their kitchen getting water after a chemo round left me shaky. The door to the garage was cracked. Brooke's voice floated through, clear as mountain air. I already talked to Henderson's funeral home. They have this gorgeous bronze casket with rose gold handles. It photographs beautifully, and the chapel seats 200, so we can make it a real celebration of life. Caleb laughed. "She's not even dead yet." "She will be," Brooke said. "Dr. Patel gave her 12 to 18 months max. We need to lock in pricing now. Inflation, babe." My glass slipped and shattered on the tile. They spun around. Brooke recovered first, face folding into syrupy concern. "Evelyn, you startled me. How long were you standing there?" "Long enough. I drove home shaking so hard I had to pull over twice. That night I did something I swore I'd never do again after Tom died. I called my estate attorney. Ruth Goldstein. Ruth listened without interrupting while I cried into the phone. When I finished, she said, "Evie, do you want to teach them a lesson they'll never forget?" I did. 6 weeks later, I was legally dead. Ruth drew up papers that made her executor of my estate and medical power of attorney. We found an actress from the Flat Rock Playhouse named Margaret, who was 74, 5'3", silver bob, and bore an uncanny resemblance to me if you didn't look too close. Margaret was between roles and delighted to earn $5,000 for 2 days of work. We staged everything. First, Ruth filed a change of address for me to a non-existent condo in Florida. Then we had Margaret admitted to Mission Hospital under my name. Ruth had a friend in medical records who owed her a favor and asked no questions. Margaret wore a wig, my glasses, my favorite blue cardigan. She signed the admission forms with my signature. We practiced for days. On a Tuesday in early October, Margaret Evelyn Harper took a sudden turn. Ruth called Caleb from the hospital room phone. "She's gone," Ruth said, voice breaking on cue. "I'm so sorry." Caleb and Brooke arrived within 30 minutes. I know because I was watching the hospital security feed Ruth had arranged. Caleb looked stunned. Brooke looked efficient. She asked the nurse after nurse about Mom's jewelry and whether the DNR was properly witnessed. 2 days later, the obituary ran in the Asheville Citizen-Times. Evelyn Marie Harper, 73, of Black Mountain, passed peacefully on October 9th after a courageous battle with cancer. Services will be held Saturday at Henderson's funeral home in lieu of flowers. Donations to St. Jude preferred. The comments poured in on the funeral home website. Half the town thought I was already dead. Saturday morning, I sat in the family lounge at Henderson's wearing black slacks, black blouse, and a wide-brimmed hat with a veil. Ruth had bribed the funeral director, an old college roommate, with a week in our timeshare in Hilton Head. He thought the whole thing was the best prank he'd heard in 40 years of business. At 10:55, the parking lot filled. I watched on the monitor as Caleb and Brooke greeted people in a charcoal suit I'd never seen, tags probably still on from Belk. Brooke wore a black sheath dress tight enough to remind everyone she did Pilates. She carried a single white rose and practiced crying into a monogrammed handkerchief. At 11:05, the organ started. The director dimmed the lights. Margaret lay in the bronze casket looking serene, chest barely moving under the satin blanket. She was a professional, after all. I waited in the side corridor until the eulogies began. Brooke went first. She walked to the podium, clutching a stack of notes. Her voice trembled just the right amount. Evelyn wasn't just my mother-in-law. She was my best friend. She taught me how to make the perfect buttermilk biscuits and how to love unconditionally. I almost snorted loud enough to be heard. Brooke continued. She told me many times she wanted us to have the house in Black Mountain, that it would be our legacy to raise our future children in. That was new. I'd never said any such thing. She finished with, "We will miss her every day, but we find comfort knowing she's reunited with Tom and free from pain." Polite sniffles all around. Then Caleb stood. He looked thinner. Good. He cleared his throat. Mom was the most generous woman I ever knew. She sacrificed everything for me. And even though her last few months were difficult, she wanted us taken care of. Ruth Goldstein will read the will this afternoon, but Mom made her wishes very clear. He started to cry. Real tears this time. I felt nothing. That was my cue. I slipped off the veil, smoothed my blouse, and walked through the side door into the chapel. The organist saw me first and missed a note. A collective gasp rippled through the room. I stepped up to the casket, looked down at Margaret, who kept her eyes closed like the trooper she was, and said in a clear voice that carried to the back pew, "Surprise, sweetheart. I'm only dead to people who pick out my casket while I'm still breathing." You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. Brooke made a sound like a stepped-on cat. Caleb turned the color of skim milk. I turned to the congregation, half the garden club, my book club, Pastor Mike, and 3 of my late husband's old Marine buddies, and smiled. Thank you all for coming to my funeral. I'm touched, truly, but as you can see, reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. Someone in the 3rd row started clapping. Then the whole room erupted. Phones came out. I posed for selfies like it was a damn gender reveal. Brooke recovered first. She marched up the aisle, face blotchy with rage red. This is insane. You're mentally incompetent. We have doctors. No, I said, loud enough for the microphones. You have a doctor friend who owes you favors. I have Dr. Patel's actual records, which say I'm responding beautifully to treatment and in full possession of my faculties. Ruth stepped forward, holding a thick folder. And I have the new will, signed, witnessed, and notarized last week. Would you like me to read it now? Or would you prefer to wait until you're not standing next to an empty casket you already put a deposit on? Caleb tried. Mom, were you testing us? Sweet boy, I said, if this was a test, you both failed so spectacularly, the professor retired. I turned back to the room. For those wondering what happens next, here's the short version. The house in Black Mountain has been sold. Closing is Monday. The proceeds are going to establish the Thomas Harper Memorial, scholarship for children of veterans, and to the local animal shelter. My remaining accounts are in an irrevocable trust. Caleb and Brooke will receive. I pulled 2 envelopes from my purse, exactly what they always believed my love was worth. I handed them the envelopes. Inside each was a single check. For $1 and a note in my handwriting. For therapy you clearly need. Love always. Anyway, Mom Brooks screamed. Actually screamed. Caleb just stared at the check like it might bite him. Pastor Mike came up and hugged me. V. Harper, you're my hero. The organist, God bless her, struck up When the Saints Go Marching In. Half the congregation started singing. Someone popped confetti poppers. Margaret sat up in the casket, took a bow, and said in a perfect mountain accent, "Y'all, the biscuits in heaven are terrible." Glad to be back. We turned my fake funeral into a real party. The funeral home brought out sheet cakes. Somebody ordered barbecue. I danced with Pastor Mike to Sweet Carolyn, while Brooke and Caleb stood in the corner looking like they'd been slapped with a fish. Later, when the crowd thinned, Caleb approached me. "Alone this time, Mom," he whispered. "Can we talk?" I looked at my son, really looked, and saw a stranger wearing my little boy's face. "We have nothing left to say, baby. You planned my funeral before I was cold. I just saved you the trouble of pretending afterward." I kissed his cheek because some habits die harder than others, and walked out into the October sunshine. 3 months later, I'm living in a cute condo in Asheville with a balcony that overlooks the mountains. My cancer is in remission. I take painting classes, volunteer at the animal shelter, and host Sunday supper for friends who don't need my money to love me, Caleb and Brooke. Last I heard, they're renting a 2-bedroom in Weaverville and fighting over who gets the dollar checks framed. Sometimes I get cards from people who were at the funeral. They all say the same thing: best funeral ever. I sign everyone. Still kicking, Evelyn Harper, not dead yet.